The prison ship smelled like rust and fear. Had been breathing that smell for 3 weeks now, ever since the warships attacked her colony. She remembered the bright flash of plasma fire in the sky. She remembered running. She remembered the moment when everything went dark. Now she was here, in the belly of a ship called the Crimson Dawn, wearing gray prisoner clothes and waiting for whatever terrible thing would happen next. There were tall creatures, almost 7 feet, with skin like dark scales and eyes that glowed orange in the dim light. They walked through the prisoner halls like gods, and maybe they were. Their empire had conquered 17 star systems. Humans were just another species they had collected, like insects in a jar. Was 26 years old. She had short black hair that she kept tied back and hands that were always looking for something to fix. Back on New, the mining colony where she grew up, everyone knew her as the girl who could repair anything. Broken water purifiers, damaged mining drills, malfunctioning life support systems. Give a problem and some tools and she would find a way. But that was before. Now she was prisoner 7892, assigned to waste processing. Waste processing was exactly what it sounded like, the lowest job on the ship. The place where prisoners went to be forgotten. Spent her days sorting trash, cleaning filters, and trying not to breathe in the toxic fumes that filled the recycling chambers. The other prisoners in her section were a mixed group. There were humans mostly, but also some aliens from other conquered worlds. Nobody talked much. Talking required energy, and energy was something they did not have. But watched, she noticed things. She saw how the machines worked, how their systems connected, what made them run. Even when she was elbow-deep in garbage, her mind was mapping the ship's technology. One night, about a month after her capture, was walking back to her sleeping quarters when she heard a strange sound. It was a grinding noise, metal scraping against metal, followed by a high-pitched whine. She stopped and listened. The sound was coming from a maintenance alcove, a small space between two walls where the ship's life support systems were housed. Looked around. No guards were nearby. She should keep walking. She should mind her own business. Getting caught in restricted areas meant punishment, and punishments were not gentle. But the sound was wrong. It was the sound of a machine dying. Slipped into the alcove. The atmospheric recycler was an old unit, probably installed when the ship was first built. It was shaking badly and smoke was rising from its side panel. Could see immediately what was happening. The rotation bearings had failed, causing the internal fan to wobble. If left alone, the whole unit would burn out within hours. And if the recycler failed, the air quality in this entire section would drop to dangerous levels. She looked at the machine, then she looked at her hands, then she looked around the alcove for anything useful. There was a discarded toolkit in the corner, probably left behind by some lazy technician. Grabbed it and got to work. The bearings were completely destroyed, but found some metal rings in the scrap pile nearby that were almost the right size. She used a small plasma welder to reshape them, then carefully installed them in place of the broken parts. The fan was bent, so she straightened it using a pipe as a lever. The power coupling was corroded, so she cleaned it with a piece of cloth torn from her shirt. 3 hours later, the recycler was running again, not just running, but running better than before. Had adjusted the airflow and optimized the power consumption. The machine hummed quietly, doing its job without complaint. She put the tools back and slipped away before anyone could find her. The next morning, a technician named came to inspect the recycler. He had been planning to file a report recommending its replacement, a process that would take months and cost resources the ship did not want to spend. Instead, he found a perfectly functioning unit. Stared at the machine for a long time. He ran diagnostic tests. Everything came back green, better than green. The recycler was performing at 140% efficiency. He checked the maintenance logs. No repair had been scheduled. No technician had been assigned. Was not a stupid creature, he started asking questions. It took him 2 days to find the answer. A security camera in a nearby corridor had caught a glimpse of a small human figure entering the alcove on the night in question. Cross-referencing with prisoner records gave him a name, prisoner 7892, waste processing. Could have reported her for unauthorized access to ship systems. That would have been the proper thing to do. Instead, he went to see his supervisor, a senior officer named Commander. A human prisoner repaired the unit, asked, his orange eyes narrowing. Yes, Commander, and she improved it. Impossible, humans are primitive. They barely understand their own technology. I have the diagnostic data, Commander. The recycler is performing better than it has in years. Was silent for a moment, the valued efficiency above almost everything else. A prisoner who could improve ship systems was valuable. A prisoner rotting in waste processing was a waste of resources. Move her, said finally. Put her in maintenance bay 7, give her tools, see what else she can fix. Nodded and the unauthorized access violation. Forget it, if she causes problems, we can always execute her later. 3 days later was transferred from the garbage pits of waste processing to a small maintenance bay on the ship's lower decks. It was not freedom. She still wore prisoner clothes. She still had a number instead of a name in the records, but she had tools now and machines that needed fixing. On her first day in the new bay, she met. He was a human man, maybe 30 years old, with tired eyes and a quick smile. He had been a cargo pilot before they captured him, running supplies between human colonies. Now he worked in the food distribution center, carrying boxes of nutrient paste to different parts of the ship. "You are the one who fixed the recycler," he said, leaning against the door of her bay. "Everyone is talking about it." Looked up from the broken heating unit she was examining. Everyone. "Well, the prisoners at least, they do not care about our gossip," he smiled. I heard you might need someone to bring you extra food rations. I can do that. In exchange, maybe you can look at my translator implant. It has been glitching for weeks." Considered this, having an ally was useful. Having extra food was even more useful. "Show me the implant." Sat down and tilted his head, revealing a small device behind his ear. Examined it carefully. The problem was simple, a loose connection caused by poor installation. She fixed it in 10 minutes. "There," she said, "it should work properly now." Tested it, speaking a few words in. The translation came through clear and smooth. His smile grew wider. "You are amazing," the text said. It could not be fixed. They were wronged. From that day on became her friend, or at least something close to a friend in this terrible place. He brought her food and gossip from other parts of the ship. He told her which guards were cruel and which ones could be avoided. He became her eyes and ears in a world where information meant survival. Kept her head down and fixed what was broken. Word spread quietly among the lower officers. The human in Bay 7 could repair things that others could not. She was useful. And in the Empire, being useful was the only way to stay alive. 2 months passed on the Crimson Dawn. Fixed machines, she kept quiet, she survived. Her reputation grew slowly, like a vine climbing a wall. First it was just the broken recycler. Then it was a malfunctioning gravity plate in one of the cargo bays. Then it was a weapons system that had been offline for a year because no one could find the fault. Found it in 20 minutes. A tiny crack in a power conduit, invisible to the eye but obvious if you knew where to look. The officers started to notice. Some were curious. Some were angry that a human, a prisoner, could do what their trained technicians could not, but most of them cared only about results and gave them results. She made another friend during this time, an old woman named who worked in the prisoner kitchens. Had been captured 15 years ago, one of the first humans taken by the when they expanded into human space. She had survived longer than almost anyone. She knew every secret of the ship, every hidden passage, every guard's weakness. And she had a kind face, the kind that made you want to trust her. "You are making waves, little engineer," said one evening, sliding an extra portion of bread across the table to, "Be careful, they do not like waves." "I am just fixing things," replied. "Yes, things that their own people cannot fix. That makes them look bad, that makes them angry." Understood, but what choice did she have? If she stopped being useful, she would be sent back to waste processing, or worse. "Just be careful," repeated, "and eat your bread." Around this time began to notice a young guard named Lieutenant. He was different from the others. When he walked through the prisoner areas, he did not hit anyone. He did not shout. He just watched with eyes that seemed more thoughtful than cruel. Sometimes he would stop by Maintenance Bay 7 and observe working. He never spoke to her directly, but she could feel his attention. It made her nervous at first. Was he waiting for her to make a mistake? Was he looking for a reason to punish her? But days passed and nothing happened. Just watched, and sometimes there was something in his expression that looked almost like respect. Meanwhile, far above the prisoner decks, in the throne room of the Crimson Dawn, Empress was having a very bad month. Was the supreme ruler of the Empire. She had held power for 40 years, crushing every rival and every rebellion. She was feared across 17 star systems. Armies trembled at her name. But right now she was staring at a piece of armor and feeling something she had not felt in decades: helplessness. The crown armor of was ancient. It had been built over 1,000 years ago when the Empire was young. Every ruler had worn it into battle. It was a symbol of power, a sign that the wearer was blessed by the ancestors themselves. And it was broken. The armor had been failing for months now. Power systems flickered randomly. Weapons locked up at the worst moments. The life support sometimes stopped working for terrifying seconds. Engineers had tried everything, but the technology was so old that no one understood how it worked anymore. The original blueprints had been lost centuries ago. could not admit weakness. She could not let anyone know that the crown armor was failing. Her enemies, both foreign and domestic, would smell blood in the water. There were always rivals waiting for a chance to strike. Grand Admiral, in particular, had been watching her with hungry eyes lately. "Well," she demanded, glaring at the chief engineer kneeling before her. "What is your report?" The engineer's scales had gone pale with fear. "Your Majesty, we have tried everything. The armor systems are beyond our understanding. We need more time." "You have had 6 months. The technology is ancient, Your Majesty. Some of the components do not match anything in our databases. We believe the original builders used techniques that have been lost." Wanted to kill him, she wanted to rip his throat out with her claws and find someone competent. But she had already gone through 4 chief engineers this year. Killing another one would not help. "Get out," she hissed. "Find a solution or do not bother coming back." The engineer fled. Stood alone in her throne room, staring at the crown armor on its display stand. It was beautiful, even in its broken state, dark metal that seemed to absorb light, edges sharp enough to cut through steel, a helmet shaped like a snarling beast. She needed that armor. Without it, she was just another. With it, she was the rightful heir to 1,000 years of conquest. Somewhere in the ship's lower decks, a prisoner named was fixing another broken machine. The call came without warnings. It was late in the sleep cycle when 2 soldiers appeared at the door of Maintenance Bay 7. They were not the usual guards. These were royal soldiers, wearing the red marks of the Empress's personal forces. "Prisoner 7892, one of them barked. "Come with us." His heart froze. This was it. Something had gone wrong. Someone had complained. She was going to be executed. She looked around for him, but he was not there. She thought of his warning about making waves. Too late now. The soldiers did not give her time to speak. They grabbed her arms and dragged her through corridors she had never seen before. Up, up, up through the ship, past checkpoints and security doors, into levels that prisoners were never supposed to enter. Finally, they reached a massive door covered in gold symbols. The Royal Armory. Inside, the room was dark except for a single light shining down on a raised platform. On that platform stood the crown armor. Forgot her fear for a moment. The armor was magnificent. Even from across the room, she could see the craftsmanship, the complexity, the sheer age of the thing. It was a masterpiece. An official stepped out of the shadows. His name was High Steward, and he was one of the most powerful creatures on the ship, second only to the Empress herself. He looked at like she was an insect. "This is the human?" he asked the soldiers. "Yes, High Steward." Walked closer to, his eyes examining her. "I have heard reports. You fix things that our engineers cannot fix." Nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. "Good," and pointed at the crown armor. "Fix that." Stared at him. The crown armor, the legendary armor of the rulers. "You have heard of it. Good, it is broken. Our engineers have failed. You will succeed or you will die for wasting our time." He smiled, showing sharp teeth. "You have 3 days." Then he turned and walked away, leaving alone with the armor and the 2 guards. She stood there for a long moment, just breathing. This was impossible. She was a human prisoner. She knew nothing about ancient technology. How could she possibly fix something that the Empire's best minds had failed to repair? But what choice did she have? Walked slowly toward the armor. She circled it once, twice, 3 times. She looked at every seam, every joint, every panel. She noticed the scorch marks where power had overloaded. She saw the patches where previous repair attempts had failed. Then she stopped and really looked. Under all the alien symbols and decorations, under all the strange metals and unknown alloys, she saw something familiar. The basic structure, the way the systems connected, the logic of the design. It was different from human technology, but it was not completely different. Every machine, no matter how advanced, follows certain rules. Power must flow, heat must escape, signals must travel. The builders from 1,000 years ago had faced the same problems that human engineers faced. They had just solved them in different ways. Asked the guards for tools. They brought her a complete engineering kit, probably confiscated from some conquered world. She found a diagnostic scanner and began testing the armor's systems. For the next 36 hours, she did not sleep. She barely ate. She traced every power line, every circuit, every connection. She found problems that the engineers had missed because they were looking for complex failures. The real issues were simple: corrosion here, a blocked coolant line there, a calibration error in the power distribution system. They had treated the armor like a holy relic. They were afraid to touch it, afraid to really dig into its systems. Treated it like what it was, a machine. A very old, very complicated machine, but still just a machine. When she finally finished, she was so tired she could barely stand. But the armor's diagnostic lights were all green, power flowed smoothly, weapon systems responded correctly, life support hummed quietly. She had done it. The guards reported to High Steward, tested the armor himself, not believing the reports. Then he stood in silence for a very long time. Finally he spoke, "Bring the Empress." His blood went cold. She had succeeded in fixing the armor, but now she was about to meet the most powerful and dangerous creature in 17 star systems. And she had no idea if that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. The throne room of the Crimson Dawn was the largest space had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far above. The floor was made of polished black stone that reflected light like water. Massive columns lined the walls, each one carved with images of victories throughout history. At the far end of the room, on a throne made of bones and metal, sat Empress. Had heard stories about the Empress. Everyone had, the conqueror, the cruel, the iron claw of the empire. She had ruled for 40 years, longer than any emperor before her. She had personally killed 17 rivals who tried to take her throne. She had led armies to victory on 100 battlefields. But stories could not prepare for the reality. Was huge even by standards. Almost 8 feet tall, with scales so dark they were almost black. Her eyes glowed like molten copper, and when she moved, every motion was smooth and dangerous, like a predator preparing to strike. She was wearing simple battle armor now, not the crown armor. But even without it, she radiated power. The air in the room seemed heavier near her, as if gravity itself bent to her will. Was brought before the throne and forced to her knees. Her hands were still stained with grease and coolant from working on the armor. She had not slept in 2 days. She probably looked terrible. She definitely smelled terrible. Around her, the court watched in silence. Dozens of nobles and officers filled the throne room, all of them staring at the small human kneeling before their empress. Some looked curious, many looked disgusted, a few looked angry. Did not speak immediately. She studied the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. There was intelligence in those burning eyes, realized, and something else, something calculating. So the Empress said finally, her voice was deep and cold, "This is the creature that fixed my armor." "Yes, your majesty," said High Steward, bowing low. "The human prisoner repaired the crown armor in 36 hours. All systems are fully functional." A murmur ran through the court. 36 hours. The best engineers in the empire had failed for 6 months. Rose from her throne and descended the steps toward. Each footstep echoed like thunder in the silent room. When she reached the bottom, she began to circle the kneeling human, moving slowly, examining her from every angle. "Look at me," commanded. Raised her head and met the Empress's eyes. It took all her courage not to look away. Those eyes were terrifying, but behind the terror there was something fascinating. This creature was old and powerful and had seen things that could not imagine. "You are small," observed. "Weak. Your species has no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. Your technology is primitive. Your military was defeated easily. And yet," she paused, "you fixed something that my best engineers could not. Tell me how." His mouth was dry. She knew that her next words could mean life or death. She thought about lying, about pretending it was luck or accident. But something told her that would see through any deception. The Empress had not survived 40 years by being fooled easily. "So told the truth. Your engineers treated the armor like a sacred object, your majesty. They were afraid to really examine it. They thought the technology was beyond understanding, so they never tried to understand it." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I treated it like a machine because that is what it is. A very old, very complicated machine, but still a machine. Machines follow rules. If you understand the rules, you can fix anything." Silence filled the throne room. No one moved, no one breathed. Then Empress did something that shocked everyone present. She laughed. It was not a kind laugh. There was no warmth in it. But it was genuine amusement, the laugh of someone who had just heard something truly unexpected. "Like a machine," she repeated. "The crown armor of worn by 40 generations of rulers, and you treat it like a machine." She laughed again. "I think I like this human." The court did not know how to react. Some laughed nervously, others looked confused. A few, like Grand Admiral standing in the corner, looked deeply unhappy. Stopped laughing and turned to High Steward. "Remove her chains." Blinked, "Your Majesty." "You heard me, remove the chains. This creature is no longer a prisoner." She looked back at with those burning eyes. "From this moment you are my royal engineer. You will maintain the crown armor. You will answer directly to me. No one else gives you orders. No one else touches the armor without your permission." The court erupted in whispers. Royal engineer, a human, it was unprecedented, it was scandalous, it was impossible. But no one dared to argue with Empress. The chains fell from his wrists. She stood slowly, her legs shaking from exhaustion and shock. She could not believe what was happening. You will have quarters in the upper levels, continued. You will have tools, assistance, whatever you need. In return, you will keep my armor functioning perfectly. Fail me and you die. Succeed and you will be protected. Found her voice, yes, your majesty. Nodded once, then turned and walked back to her throne. Court is dismissed, everyone out except the human and steward. The crowd dispersed quickly. Within minutes, the massive throne room was nearly empty. Only and the Empress remained. Sat back on her throne and studied with new interest. Now that we are alone, tell me the truth. Why do you think you succeeded where others failed? Considered the question, partly what I said before. I was not afraid of the armor, I just saw problems that needed solving. She paused. But also, I think I see things differently. Humans are good at finding patterns, at connecting different ideas. Your engineers are specialists. They know technology very well, but they only know technology. I have studied many different systems. Human, alien, old, new. Sometimes the solution to one problem comes from somewhere completely unexpected. Leaned forward slightly. You were an engineer before your capture. Yes, your majesty, in the Korean Stellar Navy, I designed and maintained ship systems. Hesitated, then decided to tell the full truth. I was discharged after a political problem, not my fault, but that did not matter. I ended up on a mining colony, then your ships came. Politics, said, a hint of darkness in her voice. I understand politics very well, too well. She was silent for a moment. You will have enemies here, human. Many will hate you simply for being what you are. Some will see you as a threat to their positions. Others will try to use you against me. I understand, your majesty. Do you, I wonder? His eyes seem to pierce through. I am giving you power, little engineer. Power always attracts attention and not all of it is good. You will need to be clever to survive. Nodded slowly, she was beginning to understand. The Empress was not just giving her a job. She was throwing her into a pit of snakes and seeing if she could survive. One more thing, said, the armor. What did you actually find wrong with it? Thought about her 36 hours of work. Many small problems, corrosion in the power lines, blocked cooling channels, calibration errors that had built up over centuries. But the biggest issue was the central power core. It was misaligned by less than half a degree, such a small error, but it caused failures throughout the entire system. And you fixed it? Yes, but I also made some improvements. The power flows more efficiently now. The weapon systems respond faster. The armor should perform better than it has in centuries. Smiled, and for the first time there was something almost like warmth in it. Good, very good, she waved her hand. We'll show you to your new quarters, rest tonight, tomorrow your real work begins. Bowed and followed out of the throne room. Her head was spinning. 12 hours ago she had been a prisoner facing execution. Now she was the royal engineer living in the upper levels, protected by the Empress herself. But as she walked through the elegant corridors of the noble section, she saw the faces watching her. Officers and courtiers staring with open hostility. She heard whispers behind her back. She felt the weight of their hatred. Was right, she had enemies now, many enemies. And in this court of predators, one wrong step would mean death. Thought about, and still in the prisoner sections below, she thought about Lieutenant, the guard with the thoughtful eyes. She thought about everything she had learned about this ship and its people. She would need all of it to survive. The game had just begun. 3 weeks had passed since became the royal engineer. 3 weeks of work, watching, and very careful survival. Her quarters in the upper levels were nicer than anything she had ever known. A real bed with soft blankets, a private washing room, windows that showed the stars outside. She even had 2 assistants assigned to her, young technicians named and who followed her orders without complaint. But comfort was not the same as safety. Every day felt the eyes on her. When she walked through the corridors, conversations stopped. When she entered a room, creatures turned away. The hatred was everywhere, thick and heavy like smoke. She kept working. She maintained the crown armor, of course, but she also found other things to fix. Systems that had been broken for years. Equipment that no one had bothered to repair. Each successful repair added to her reputation, but it also added to the resentment against her. She still visited, and when she could. It was risky, a royal engineer going down to the prisoner levels, but she was careful. She used service corridors and maintenance passages. She never stayed long. You should not come here, said one evening, sitting across from her in a dark storage room. If they catch you, it will look bad. I know, replied, but you are my friends. I will not forget that just because I moved to a nicer room. Smiled from her corner. The little engineer still has a heart. Good, do not let them take that from you. Lieutenant had also become something like an ally. He had been reassigned from guard duty to security in the upper levels, which put him near quarters often. They did not speak much, but there was an understanding between them. He respected her skills. She respected his quiet integrity. In a place full of enemies, that was worth something. But the real danger came from above, not below. Grand Admiral was one of the most powerful creatures in the Empire, second only to Empress herself. He commanded half the fleet. He had connections throughout the military and the court, and he hated with a burning passion that he barely bothered to hide. Was old even by standards. He remembered a time before the current dynasty. He believed that the Empire should be ruled by military strength, not by ancient rituals and sacred armor. He believed that he should be emperor. For years he had been waiting for his chance, was powerful, but she was not immortal. Sooner or later there would be an opportunity. And now there was a human, a tiny, fragile human who had become essential to the Empress's most important symbol of power. Saw opportunity. He approached one evening in the engineering workshop. He came alone, without guards or aides, which was unusual for someone of his rank, felt her stomach tighten with fear as he entered. "Royal Engineer," said, his voice smooth and pleasant. "I have been wanting to meet you. Your work on the crown armor has been quite impressive." Bowed carefully, "Thank you, Grand Admiral." Moved closer, examining the tools and equipment scattered around the room. "It must be strange for you being here, surrounded by creatures that are not your kind, serving an empress who conquered your people." "I serve because I have no choice," said carefully. "Yes, of course, survival, a very human trait, I am told. Your species is quite good at adapting, at bending rather than breaking." He paused. "But tell me, Engineer, do you not wish for something more? Freedom, perhaps, a chance to return to your own people?" Felt danger in the air. This was not a friendly conversation. This was a predator circling its prey. "I am content with my current position, Grand Admiral." "Are you?" Smiled, showing too many teeth. "Let me be direct with you, human. The Empress trusts you with her most precious possession. That gives you a unique opportunity, an opportunity that could benefit us both." "What kind of opportunities?" "In 2 weeks, the Empress will lead our forces into battle against the Confederacy. She will wear the crown armor personally. It will be a critical engagement, perhaps the most important battle in decades." Leaned closer. "If something were to happen to the armor during that battle, if it were to fail at a crucial moment, the Empress would be vulnerable. The results could be significant." Understood now. He was asking her to sabotage the armor, to betray, to commit murder by equipment failure. "And if I did this thing," she said slowly, "what would happen to me?" "You would have my protection. After the battle, regardless of the outcome, I would ensure your safe passage back to human space. A ship, supplies, even some wealth to start a new life. You would be free." Free, the word echoed in his mind. How many nights had she dreamed of freedom? How many times had she imagined seeing human stars again, breathing human air, walking on human ground? But she thought about, terrible and powerful, but honest in her own way. She thought about the other prisoners on the ship who would suffer if took power. She thought about what kind of person she would become if she killed through cowardice and deception. "I need time to think," she said. Nodded, satisfied. "Of course, but do not take too long, the battle approaches quickly." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "And remember, Engineer, if you tell anyone about our conversation, I will deny everything, and then I will make sure that you and everyone you care about dies slowly." He left. Stood alone in the workshop, trembling. She had never felt so trapped. If she refused and he discovered it, she would die. If she helped him and succeeded, she would become a murderer. If she tried to tell and found out first, she would die anyway. But doing nothing was also a choice, and sometimes the right thing was the hardest thing. She went to find. It took hours to arrange a safe meeting. Finally, in the middle of the night cycle, and gathered in a hidden space between 2 cargo bays, Lieutenant stood guard outside, watching for trouble. Told them everything. When she finished, there was a long silence. "You cannot do what he asks," said finally. "If you sabotage the armor, you become a killer. That is not who you are." "But if I refuse, we all die," replied. He was very clear about that. Shook her head slowly. "There is another option. You go to the Empress, you tell her everything. And if she does not believe me, is a Grand Admiral, I am a human prisoner, why would she take my word against his?" "Because you have proof," said, "or you can get proof. If you play along with, if you pretend to agree to his plan, he may give you something that proves his treason." Looked worried. "That is very dangerous. If suspects she is playing him, he will kill her immediately." "Everything is dangerous now," replied, "but this gives us a chance, a real chance." Thought about it, the old woman was right. Running was not possible, fighting was not possible. But maybe, just maybe, she could be smart enough to survive this. "I will need help," she said. eyes and ears around the ship, someone to watch movements to gather information. I can do that, said. I move around the ship for my work. I can listen, ask questions, find things out. Stepped into the room. I can help as well. I have access to security systems. I can track communications, monitor movements. Looked at the young guard with surprise. You would betray your own kind for a human. His expression was unreadable. Is not my kind. He is a creature who would destroy the empire for his own ambition. The Empress, for all her faults, maintains order. She protects the weak, even if only because they are useful. He paused. And you, engineer, are worthy of respect. I have watched you work. You have honor. Felt something warm in her chest. These people human and were risking their lives for her. She would not let them down. All right, she said. We do this together. I pretend to work with. We gather evidence. And when we have enough, I go to the Empress. The group agreed. The plan was set. 2 days later, contacted again. She told him she would help. She told him she would sabotage the armor. He smiled and gave her specific instructions. The armor's power core should be set to fail exactly 3 hours into the battle at the moment of maximum engagement. Nodded and memorized every detail. The next morning had arrested. The charge was theft of military supplies. It was a lie, of course, had stolen nothing, but controlled the investigators. He controlled the evidence. And suddenly his closest ally was in a prison cell facing torture and execution. Sent her a message. A reminder, engineer, I know about your friends. Do what I ask and he lives. Betray me and everyone you love dies. Stared at the message for a long time. Then she made her decision. She went to find Empress. The throne room was empty except for the Empress herself, sitting alone in the darkness. Looked up as entered, her copper eyes glowing in the shadows. Royal engineer, you come to me at an unusual hour. What troubles you? Knelt before the throne. Your Majesty, I have something to tell you, something that may save your life or may cost me mine. And she told everything. His offer, the sabotage plan, the threat against her friends, all of it. When she finished, was silent for a very long time. Then slowly the Empress began to smile. Interesting, she said, very, very interesting. Not immediately and not completely, but she believed her. Could see it in those copper eyes, the cold calculation giving way to understanding. I have suspected for years, said, her voice quiet and dangerous. He has never been truly loyal, but suspicion is not proof. I could not move against him without evidence. I can give you evidence, replied. The conversation we had, his specific instructions about the armor, I remember every word. Your word against his, a human prisoner against a grand admiral, shook her head. It is not enough. He has too many allies. If I act without solid proof, his supporters will cry injustice. Civil war could follow. Felt her heart sink. Then what do we do? Was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, a cold and terrible smile. We give him what he expects. You continue to work with him. You pretend to prepare the sabotage. But instead of weakening the armor, you will strengthen it. And when the battle comes, when makes his move, we will be ready. And my friend in the prisons. He will be released within the hour. I will claim I need him for specialized work. Will not dare to question the Empress directly. True to her word, had freed before morning. She also assigned lieutenant to a special security detail with orders to watch movements and report directly to her. The next 12 days were the most intense of his life. On the surface, everything looked normal. She worked on the crown armor. She met with in secret, giving him updates on her progress. She told him the sabotage was proceeding exactly as planned. In reality, she was doing the opposite. Every system she touched became stronger. Every component she adjusted became more reliable. By the time she was finished, the crown armor was operating at a level it had not reached in centuries, maybe ever. The night before the battle came to see her one last time. Everything is ready, he asked, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Yes, Grand Admiral, 3 hours into the battle, the power core will fail. The armor will shut down completely. Good, very good, he studied her face. You have done well, human. After tomorrow, you will have your freedom. He left satisfied and confident. Watched him go, then turned back to the armor. She ran one final check. Everything was perfect. Now they just had to survive the battle. The Battle of the Rift was the largest military engagement in decades. The Confederacy had gathered a massive fleet, hundreds of warships ready to challenge control of the sector. Empress had responded with everything she had. The two forces met at the edge of a space anomaly called the Rift, where gravity was strange and navigation was treacherous. Watched from the bridge of the Crimson Dawn, surrounded by screens and sensors and holographic displays. She was not supposed to be there. No human had ever stood on the bridge of a warship during combat, but had insisted. "You will monitor the armor from here," the Empress had commanded. "If anything goes wrong, I want you where you can fix it." The battle began with fires. Thousands of weapons lit up the darkness of space. Ships exploded like tiny stars. The fleet pushed forward, with Empress at the head, her crown armor blazing with power as she led a strike force against the enemy command ships. Watch the armor's readings on her screen. Power levels stable, all systems functioning, the improvements she had made were holding. 1 hour passed, 2 hours, the battle raged on. At the 3-hour mark, noticed something strange on the sensors. A group of ships breaking formation, moving away from the main fleet. Their transponder codes identified them as belonging to Grand Admiral. Empress spoke into the communication link. "Ships are moving out of position. They are heading toward your location." His voice came back, calm despite the chaos of battle around her. "Let them come. Everything is going according to plan." On the battlefield, watched his screens with growing confusion. The 3-hour mark had passed. The crown armor should have failed by now, should be helpless, vulnerable, ready to be destroyed. But the Empress was still fighting, still winning. Her armor blazed with more power than ever before. Something had gone wrong. Understood then, the human had betrayed him. She had warned, all his careful planning, all his patient waiting, all of it had been for nothing. Rage filled him. If he could not win through deception, he would win through force. He ordered his loyal ships to attack the Empress directly. It was mutiny, open rebellion. The crews of his ships hesitated, then obeyed. They had followed for years. They trusted him more than they trusted the Empress. The fleet was suddenly fighting on two fronts, the enemy ahead and traitors behind. Turned to face the new threat. Her crown armor absorbed weapons fire that should have destroyed any normal vessel. She moved through the attacking ships like a demon, cutting them apart with weapons that had not been used in centuries. But even she could not fight an entire fleet alone. A dreadnought saw its opportunity and fired everything it had at the Empress. The blast hit her directly. On the bridge, alarms screamed, stared at her screen in horror. The armor systems were flickering, power levels dropping, something had been damaged. "Empress," she shouted into the comm, "your power systems are destabilizing. I am rerouting auxiliary power now." How long's voice was strained. Could see on the sensors that she was surrounded, enemy ships closing in from all directions. 30 seconds. I may not have 30 seconds. His fingers flew across the controls. She had never worked faster in her life. She found the damaged pathways. She rerouted power from secondary systems. She adjusted the flow to compensate for the failures. "I will make it 20, she promised. 18 seconds later, power surged back into the crown armor. Rose from where the blast had driven her down. Around her, enemy ships hesitated, surprised that she was still alive. It was the last mistake they ever made. The Empress tore through them like a force of nature. When she reached its command ship, she ripped open the hull with her bare claws. The Grand Admiral tried to fight, tried to flee, but there was no escaping 40 years of rage. Died screaming. With their leader dead, the rebel ships surrendered. The fleet, seeing the sudden shift, began to retreat. What could have been a disaster became a victory. The Battle of the Rift was over. 1 week later, the Empress held court. The throne room was filled with every important creature on the ship. Officers, nobles, diplomats, all gathered to hear speak. She announced the execution of co-conspirators. She announced promotions for those who had stayed loyal. She announced new policies for the treatment of prisoners throughout the fleet. From this day forward, declared, human prisoners will no longer be condemned to waste processing. Those with skills will be identified and trained. They will serve the Empire according to their abilities, not their species. It was not freedom, understood that. The humans were still prisoners, still conquered people, but it was something, a first step. Then turned to who stood at the foot of the throne. "And you," the Empress said, "you could have escaped, you could have sabotaged my armor and fled to human space. Would have given you everything you asked for. Why did you not take his offer?" The throne room fell silent. Everyone waited for his answer. She thought about the question. She thought about freedom, about home, about everything she had lost. And then she thought about who she was, who she wanted to be. "Because I do not build things to break, your majesty," she said. "I build things to last." Studied her for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. "Then build," the Empress said, and for the first time she used her name, not human, not prisoner, not even engineer, her name, build something that lasts. In the years that followed, did exactly that. She trained other human engineers, sharing her knowledge and her methods. She improved systems throughout the fleet, making ships faster and stronger and more efficient. She became a bridge between two species, proof that cooperation was possible even between conqueror and conquered. Other humans followed her path. They called themselves the Forgeborn, named for the work they did, the things they built, the fires they survived. They were still not free, not truly, but they had respect. They had purpose. They had hope. Lieutenant became captain, then commander, rising through the ranks with unusual speed. He never forgot the human engineer who had shown him that courage came in many forms. Returned to piloting, eventually commanding supply ships that moved between worlds. He visited whenever his routes brought him close. Lived to see her people rise from the garbage pits to the engineering bays. She died peacefully, knowing that her advice had helped change history. And in the royal armory, beside the crown armor that still bore her modifications, there was a small plaque. It was written in both script and Korean, a language that most could not read but that they knew to respect. The plaque said simply, "I build things to last, of new." Empress ruled for another 30 years after the Battle of the Rift. She was never beloved, never kind, never gentle. But she was fair in her own terrible way. And she never forgot the small human who had fixed her armor and told her the truth when lying would have been easier. Some said she treated humans better after that. Some said she simply respected competence regardless of species. Some said she saw in something that she had once seen in herself, a survivor who refused to be broken. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. When the historians of the future wrote about the Empire, about its conquests and its conflicts and its eventual transformation, they would write about a battle and a betrayal and a throne room confrontation. And they would write about a human engineer named, who answered the Empress's question with 3 simple words. "I build things to last." And she did.